Whoo! The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for you for another little Wednesday Q&A. And boy, I am in the dungeon, as it were, kind of on a remote location here. So, so if you're wondering about the audio quality, that's what's up with that. But anyway, we got a great little Q&A here for you. I am alone this week as far as doing it. Was joined last week by the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy. Had a great time with that one. Got a lot of messages about it. People saying woo woo woo. I mean, all kinds of woos. With some questions about perhaps some of the things said, but overall, I'm glad everybody enjoys it when she's on. Always love having Stephanie work on anything with me. Just the best. She's wonderful. So anyway, we've got one really big question this week to get into, but I'm going to try and get into a couple more outside of that. And I'll try and have some fun at the end, though I don't want this to run forever. So, and this is literally getting recorded on Wednesday. It is November 23rd. 2016, and I will be also releasing something tomorrow for you on Thanksgiving, and that will be the making special of Soviet Tech 2, The Red Hope. And I'll be going into depth. It won't be a terribly long episode, but it's just something where I'll be going into depth on what it took to make it, some of the questions of, what happened in it. So if you haven't listened to episode 199C of Sovereign Tech yet, you're going to want to do that. Jump on it there to really, to appreciate, I guess. I mean, I'll try and make it as broad as I can anyway. That way people, if you haven't listened to 199C yet, I guess you could still get something out of it. But there it is. Anyway, so why don't we start? Let's open this right up with questions here. And like I said, one of them is going to be huge. And I'm going to read the full question just to make sure, that I do it proper justice. Because it's a really, really serious topic. But let's get into one. This is actually, I think, from a newer Patreon listener. But it's when you say that no one asked for Ethereum, is that to say that there are no good Ethereum projects? I anticipated the creation of Augur. Can Augur or another project validate Ethereum? Okay, so I have, just in brief, I will, rediscuss the fact that, I have been against the idea of Ethereum since its inception. Right from the get-go, I said there's something off about this. At first I guess I shouldn't say right from the get-go. There were points where I was like, okay, I'm interested in maybe, what you're trying to do here. But as soon as some details came out and some other things, and as soon as, as soon as almost nothing was coming out for such a long period of time, I began to question things, and then, again, once we did really get a lot of details as far as what, Ethereum was actually going to do, what it's about, et cetera, then I became, just an immediate critic, especially when the crowd sale came around. I have been against the idea of Ethereum for some time. Now, does that, and I think this is a great question, is there something that, say, could get built onto Ethereum that could somehow make Ethereum okay? Augur wouldn't be a good example of that. I'll get that out of the way right here. Just because I think the idea of prediction markets, I think this is an incredibly flawed idea. I know a lot of people are like, yeah, but you put Mises and Hayek together and, it's gonna be fucking amazing. And we could do futurarchy, kind of like Robin Hanson was talking about. Now I've covered Augur in the past. Of course, it's been some time. Prediction markets, it depends. What exactly do you want the prediction market for? The most people I talk about, now I'm just going to spend a moment on Augur. I know that's not exactly the question, but since it's brought up, I just want to, briefly touch on this. What exactly do people want Augur to do? And a lot of people, it sounds like, or at least some of the people I know that are close to the project, not that I know personally, but that have, kind of hinted at things here and there, seem to be claiming that, they very much are going for like Robin Hanson's futurarchy. Now, Robin Hanson was kind of the first guy, obviously not the first guy to come up with a prediction market, but he was the first guy to really implement. He had that Project Xanadu, right? That was back in the 90s where he implemented it. And other companies are doing, I mean, Microsoft has a prediction market that they run internally, where they use that to kind of guess the president. And often it's kind of, it does a good job of guessing who will be president. I don't know. I'm curious. I don't know if Microsoft, if their internal prediction software predicted Trump. I would actually venture that it didn't, and it probably got it wrong, which is interesting in and of itself, but I could be wrong about that. I can't confirm that. I don't know. But internally, I mean, the reason Microsoft doesn't talk much about what's going on with their prediction market software is because it generally fails, unless it's a really, really controlled environment, which in many ways, especially one that uses an electoral college, which in many ways an election is. Very much a controlled environment. And that's the thing, is that when there's a certain amount of variables, it seems like prediction markets can work. But then once you open it up, I think that they fall apart. The more people you add into it, the more it, and I know the theory is that it gets more accurate. I disagree, and I think there's a lot of good evidence about that. One of the best points of evidence that I bring up often against the idea of prediction markets is the classic game of chess of Gary Kasparov versus the 10,000, where he literally took on 10,000 people. He was effectively taking, because really a prediction market is what? Wisdom of the crowds, right? And so Gary Kasparov, the very famous, Russian chess player, he was taking on the wisdom of the crowds, and he beat the shit out of the wisdom of the crowds, quite frankly. The individual just took the wisdom of the crowds to task. And that's kind of my point, is that I think the wisdom of the crowds is just it's a failed idea. There is a place for it at certain points. I guess, like there's points where it might be interesting and you might get some value out of it, but in widespread use, it seems to fall apart based upon all the examples we have. And I cannot for the life of me imagine, including just because, Augur incentivizes and has a reputation system, which don't even get me started on reputation systems. That this will be different because the incentives are there. And that's really the whole problem with prediction markets, is just because the incentives have always been kind of skewed, and Augur is going to solve that. I have a hard time believing that these guys are that smart, that somehow they figured out, how to solve problems that, literally billions of dollars have been thrown at to try and create, just within Microsoft alone, to try and create like these, working models of prediction markets, and they don't work. And also, again, you can't. I always love the saying. Not that it's artificial intelligence; it's not. But I love the saying, artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity. And that's the thing, is I think that a lot of what people consider about prediction markets, it just, there's so many factors that that really don't have a basis in reality. So the idea looks good on paper, right? But so do a lot of other things, and they don't work when they finally get out there. So my question becomes, with Augur and say prediction markets, like why? What do you want to do with this? What's the point? Are you just playing a little game? If you're just playing a little game, if this is just like a little version of, if this is just a little gamble that you're doing here and there, well, I don't give a shit. You go ahead and maybe there'll be some interesting things about that. But if prediction markets are being designed to somehow guess when, the entire planet is going to get a case of the flu, or, and I know people are going to be, well, Twitter can predict this. There's some very skewed information in that. A lot of that stuff's been debunked. Or even the webbot. The webbot's been way off on shit, way more than it's been right. If you're looking to use it, much like Robin Hanson discussed using it, which was for futurarchy, where literally you would use a prediction market to create potentially the best policies within a certain geographic space or within, a certain citizenry or something along those lines. If you're talking about that, I think it's just a terrible, terrible, terrible fucking idea. And there's a lot I've talked about on Sovereign Tech, a few times, and I don't expect everybody to hear every episode of Sovereign Tech. Nor can I honestly remember like every episode number for every time I talked about something. But if someone's really interested in hearing my thoughts on prediction markets and Augur in general, because I've been talking about it since really the idea came out, I will find those for you. You can email me or message me, and I will definitely, I'll definitely hunt those down for you. But I only want to know if you have the interest, and then I'll go for it. So, I mean, because, yeah, Augur's been, so DARPA actually tried getting into prediction markets and all this. In fact, they hired Robin Hanson. They made Future Map, which was, what is known about it is really like, it seemed like they were trying to implement Hanson's idea of futurarchy. And there's kind of scant information on the whole thing. And it is questionable as to why exactly DARPA canceled their interest in prediction markets. But as best as I can tell, it's because they knew it didn't work. Or, some people might interpret that as, well, it's because they knew it would, if we relied on prediction markets, we realized we don't need governments. And so we would just replace governments with prediction markets. So DARPA shut the whole thing down because they didn't want people to realize that. I think that's a little bit of a leap, to say that's what it's about. Because, really, prediction markets are just another form of government. If you're using it for that purpose, for setting up policies and all this, and regulations, whatever else. Even if you are using it, say, within a privatized society or something, it is still effectively, a government if you are turning over all power and all decision making over to the wisdom of the crowds effectively with a prediction market. So anyway, I know there's a lot of ANCAPs out there. They get all hot and bothered. They start clasping the chest saying, "Oh my God, oh, prediction markets, yeah, Hayek." Ooh, but it doesn't do anything for me. And I have, I think there's provably way more problems than what it could potentially work out as being. So it depends on what exactly you're looking for to use that sort of thing. Now, that doesn't really answer exactly the question that was being asked, because really the question wasn't, or at least I'm guessing it wasn't exactly about Augur itself. The question was more, could something be built onto Ethereum that would make it worthwhile? That would be like, okay, yeah, well, all right, Ethereum itself kind of sucks, but there's this use case, and so that could be, this could make it viable, this could make it exciting, something along those lines. And I suppose that's kind of possible, but I think part of the reason that, how to put this, part of the reason that I think, well, okay, so, there's major, security flaws just in the implementation itself of Ethereum. And Daniel Krasowitz has done great work on documenting a lot of these issues with Ethereum itself, as to where, right down to its own, effectively scripting language, that there are, there's massive security concerns to be had there. And that stuff aside, even a lot of people, and I have friends that are very much into Ethereum. They keep a really, really close eye on it. And they've even dealt with people at, say, Consensus, which is an Ethereum company out of New York. And of course, Microsoft is now also working with Consensus on trying to, build out some interesting things. I think, probably they're looking for ways to complement Microsoft Azure, right? And what is it? Is it IPFS? The cloud-based, hard drive storage system? They decided to go with blockchain-based, cloud storage. They decided to go with, it's the interplanetary file system, right? They decided to go with Ethereum instead of Bitcoin. Now, here's an example of something that a lot of people are interested in that could be built on Ethereum, and that, maybe would, one might think that, well, this is going to prove that, okay, Ethereum is a good thing. Now, let's ask ourselves, in particular with IPFS, okay, why are they doing this? And I didn't even I had a point I wanted to make. My point is that I have friends who are knee deep in Ethereum, and even they say that there's no actual viable product developed yet for Ethereum, and what's taking so long. And that's problematic because Bitcoin, people were using it right out of the gate. That's why it took it off so well. And of course, that's because Bitcoin, its purpose is within itself. It's money. Ethereum is trying to be something else. But the reason people originally got interested in it is because it was a speculative, investment that they could make money on. But outside, But I think people are starting to realize, guys, you have lots of guys, Barry Silbert, a bunch of different people, kind of saying, well, wait, I wouldn't recommend anybody to invest in this. That's not what this is about. What's the big deal here? So a lot of people are looking for, what's that? What is the product? What is the thing that's going to make Ethereum viable? Some people want to say, I'll get into IPFS again in a second, don't worry. Some people want to bring up Arcade City, that was going to be like the first real use case of Ethereum. But then, as we know now, and certainly you can listen to very recent episodes of Sovereign Tech, Arcade City never hit the ground running. And in fact, there's no, for what Arcade City wanted to do, there's no reason for it to even be on a blockchain. I mean, there's really no great reason for it to do that. So I think for something to, how to put this, for something to, to make Ethereum worthwhile, it has to be something, I would think, that can only be done on a system like Ethereum. Otherwise, it doesn't really make it worthwhile, right? I mean, like Arcade City, for example, was, Christopher David, Slapnuts, or I'm sorry, Christopher David, he came out and said, well, we already have this success. Arcade City's already a community. It's ready-made. We just got to give them an app and everything. Now, why was it ready-made? Because they created a Facebook group in Austin that allowed people to hail rides and hire rides, kind of through the Facebook group. So do you really need an app for Arcade City? And does Arcade City really need Ethereum? No. All you needed was a Facebook group. Okay? I mean, like the Ethereum aspect of it, or, even the app part of it, in many ways seems to be overkill. I mean, it's fine if you want to create an independent network of some kind, but the reason why it needed a blockchain wasn't really there yet. I mean, it could get interesting to where, it becomes decentralized and all this, and the way to, keep the ledger of it decentralized, is to use a blockchain and everything. But none of that really came to fruition. And there's apps that are kind of doing the same thing that aren't blockchain based at all. Take Cell 411, and that'll work fine. So again, no one really needs this. It just kind of points again at that fact that, or I should say, I guess, that opinion that nobody wanted Ethereum, nobody asked for Ethereum. And so now let's get into IPFS, the Interplanetary File System. Okay. This was originally going to be a Bitcoin project. Now, why isn't it a Bitcoin project anymore? Because this is one of those things where you could be like, okay, yeah, this is why it's going to work great with Ethereum. Now, the team behind IPFS, they spoke very specifically as to why they chose Ethereum instead of Bitcoin. Okay, and the reason that they did that, what they said was effectively was that, and this is key. You got to pay attention to what exactly they said. I don't have the exact quote here, but it's not hard to find. But I know what they said, and that is that the development team for Ethereum was far easier to work with. That's the gist. But it was very clear. They didn't say that Ethereum was better or that Ethereum had some kind of killer app or some killer capability. Why IPFS wanted to be on Ethereum. It was because the development community was easier to work with. That's why. So I argue, so even this, one of the best cases possible, I'd say a far more exciting technology even than Augur. And I agree, IPFS is an exciting technology. Okay. The reason to go with that had nothing to do with the technology. It had to do with the fact, and I think this is actually kind of shady and kind of ugly. Okay. Because I think what kind of reading between the lines of what the IPFS team said, okay, is that with Bitcoin, it would take that they wouldn't be able to, effectively they're saying that the development team for Bitcoin isn't pliable enough. We can't mold them to our needs and desires. It's not the technology. Okay, it's very clear in their statement that the technology is not what was needed. It was that they needed to be able to really, kind of guide and sort of puppeteer the development team. That's exactly what I got out of it. I mean, it's explicit that it's about the development team. It's implicit, I think, that the Bitcoin development team would not make adjustments that would work, say, in IPFS's favor, and maybe some of those adjustments that would have had to have happened to Bitcoin would have been, drastic. They would have been these huge changes that nobody would have ever accepted. let's be clear here on why a lot of these new technologies want to build on Ethereum. It has nothing to do with the fact that people want Ethereum or they want what it can do. It has to do with the fact that there is a user base around Ethereum. It's the Church of Vitalik, right? It's not really, and it's a speculative environment, more so than it is actually like a dev environment. So, but the fact is that they can, because Vitalik and company are so desperate to prove Ethereum, they are willing to, be a lot more pliable with other development teams, like say the IPFS team. Okay, now some of that is speculation, some of that is theory on my part, but if you think about it, I think you'll come to very similar conclusions that, they're willing to work with, they're willing to open up and they're willing to make certain changes. I mean, and it's actually some of that's very explicit. Vitalik said, he'd hard fork every day or he'd hard fork all the time. He doesn't care. And I mean, you can get into the argument over whether or not hard forks, are, I don't want to say a good thing. But I mean, you can get into all that, all those different arguments about hard forks. But yeah, I think I like it. So, an example I give a lot with, with development, software development, and certainly when it comes to security, and all of this, is that when you take something like, various distributions of Linux, there are huge arguments. Like take Debian or something. Like there are huge arguments over adding a fucking wallpaper. Like the amount, the stringent standards and the gauntlet you have to run to just to add one wallpaper, to certain Linux distros. I mean, it could take years. But that's good because they're that concerned about the security. They're far more concerned about the security than they are, than necessarily making things pretty or maybe even to some degree innovation, which I think is really important because, IoT is a wonderful innovation. Well, IoT has no fucking security. We talk about that all the time on Sovereign Tech. What good's your innovation if it's going to crash the whole fucking system? Like it did with Dyn. October 21st, 2016. Remember that? Yeah, I'd much rather had people take 10 years working on security, with IoT than just get it out there and create some new kind of market and then crash the whole goddamn internet. So, yeah, it is possible that something could get built on Ethereum that would make Ethereum viable. It would be ridiculous of me to claim otherwise. Okay. But does anything need to be built on Ethereum? Does anything need that Turing completeness and, and all that shit? I would say no. Nothing needs that. That doesn't mean you go ahead and you don't go ahead and do it. I'm not saying that. Okay. But I bring this up often, Turing completeness should really be labeled, Turing vulnerable. Like that's a security flaw. In my opinion, I mean, there's a reason, I've been saying this for years. There's a reason that Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever, they, he, or she, or it are, that they didn't make Bitcoin Turing complete because it was a security issue. They're like, no. We don't want that. So, I mean, and there's other issues too. I mean, you could get beyond even the or not necessarily development. You could even get beyond the whole idea, the whole technology with Ethereum itself. It has a huge problem in that a problem that Bitcoin just does not have, and that a lot of other ones really don't have, is that Ethereum is really guided by, it's like Christianity. Okay, it has a Christ. And the problem is, if that Christ goes away, suddenly there's a ton of confusion, right? So if we were to believe that Christ is actually a real person, Christianity, most Christians would argue, I mean, they argue all the time because there's a bunch of different types of Christianity, and that's because there's no Christ to set them all straight. And so the Ethereum has the same problem, where if Vitalik were gone, Ethereum would be a fucking mess. You'd end up with probably 20, 30 different types of Ethereum. I mean, even with Vitalik here, you already have 2. So, I mean, that's a huge problem with Ethereum, is that, it has a personality complex. It's a cult of personality. So, I mean, huge issue there. Don't mind me. I need to have a quick drink here. Some nice seltzer. And my phone's updating. Anyway, so I hope that answers the questions. Sure, yes, something could get built on top of Ethereum that could all end up becoming, very, very exciting. But at the same time, whatever that is I just cannot imagine the case that whatever it is needed Ethereum. I'm intrigued by, or I'm not intrigued, I've talked about this recently. You take Scenario, okay? That's Synero. This is something very closely related to Ethereum. In fact, I've theorized, I'm speculating, I theorize that because Ethereum has so many of these security flaws, and because because the use cases for Ethereum are not readily apparent, they're not coming out. There's Augur, but where? That Scenario is so closely tied to Ethereum that I think it's the jumping off point for when Ethereum crashes, and that's where the entire development team goes, is they go to Scenario. But now Scenario is doing kind of and I'm not saying Scenario is a good product or a project. I have my own concerns with that, and I've talked about them. But Scenario is making the right move in that it is starting out with a purpose. Ethereum didn't start out with a purpose. Okay, it didn't start out as in like Bitcoin started with a purpose. It's money. It's internet money. It's magic internet money, right? Okay, as to where, Scenario is starting off as a social network. Ethereum started off with what? I've said this on various social media. I've cracked the joke. Okay, what does the Bitcoin team dev say to itself every day? It says, okay, how can we make money even better? What does the Ethereum development team say? What the fuck are we doing again? I think that's almost a direct quote, because what are they doing? They're just creating this platform. Well, nobody's really, there's nothing built yet for it. And I think that it's a directionlessness. I like the idea that it's this wide open thing. That was intriguing at first. But then when you realize that it's wide open, but it relies on certain people, like say Vitalik and some others, to even dream of any kind of direction. Otherwise, who knows what the hell, like I said, it'd probably be, there'd be 20 different Ethereums. A lot of problems. So Scenario is doing the smart thing into where, they are starting off with a purpose. Okay. They have a use case right out of the gate. And I think that's what a lot of these projects really need to do. They need to have, something that they are meant to do right out of the gate, and there needs to be some direction, and then people can figure out from there. Because Scenario said that themselves, is that, well, this is how it starts off, but there can be other applications done, used in the future. Not, again, I don't recommend Scenario. I'm very concerned of, effectively how they're confirming hashes. Hashes are confirming, you know what I mean? How they're going about that, because they're burning off, and I don't know. It sounds like they're trying to do kind of a clever Merkle tree that I question how well that's going to work, but whatever. That's not what we're here to talk about. So yeah, I think Ethereum is a flawed idea right out of the gate. It really doesn't have a direction. Something could come out, but like Scenario, as to where instead of Scenario building onto Ethereum, which is probably a very early conversation of how that was going to work, they're just like, no, we'll just build our own, because we don't actually need what Ethereum does to do what we want to do, and that's the proof in the pudding. In my opinion, that's the thing, is that, if you want to do stuff like that, even if you want to do Augur or whatever, just do your own shit. I know you're going to say, well, what about the security of the network effect and all of that? Look, that's not there for Ethereum. Security is not there. These guys are, what the hell? What moronic thing did these guys do? They, they named one of their security patches effectively. What adds up to a security patch in Ethereum? They named it "Come at me, bro." And then they they got attacked in no time. And Ethereum was right before, Vitalik had to go in and save the day. They're just not thinking. So yeah, it could happen. What the original questioner said could happen. Somebody could come up with something that uses Ethereum that is this, real killer app, right? But at the same time, that's really not needed at all. And so it goes back to no one really asked for this. I mean, if anybody's developing for it, it's because they want to play off of the speculation. It's not because I think they see it as being really exciting, or it's because they can, that the dev team is a little more pliable, for Ethereum than it is, say, for Bitcoin. And that's why, I think IPFS went over to that. So I hope that answers that. Now, I have another big question I want to get into, and I do want to get into it. But before I do, I want to mention, so there was a little bit of a scare in the past couple weeks that, come to find out, there was some ad tech on a lot of phones that were, came out of more directly Chinese companies, right? And that this ad tech, pretty much made your Android phone just wide open to, various bad actors. Okay. There's a lot of, I won't go into all the details, but effectively there was, one of the companies that was affected by this was BLU, or Blue, Bold Like Us. That's the name of the company. Now, I use a Blue, my daily driver right now is, and at some point I need to replace it, not because of this, but because of other reasons. My daily driver right now is the Blue Vivo XL. Okay, and I've recommended Blue phones in the past because for the money, because a lot of them are sub $200, you get a lot of phone for that. I mean, you get a very, very, decently popular phone. I mean, the Blue Vivo XL, it's a $150 phone. And I mean, the thing has, it has an 8-core processor in it. I mean, it does the job. There's some compromises, certainly. But, it has pretty good battery life. I mean, I'm overall pleased with how I've been using it for almost 6 months now, and it's largely a fine phone. In fact, right now, this is ironic because after that big security, the reveal of that security exploit in some Blue phones, and I don't think the Blue Vivo XL was even listed off as one of the ones, but anyway, as soon as that came out, just today, I get the notification on my phone that says, oh, we want to do this very serious update, and now finally they're upgrading Blue, the Blue Vivo XL to Android Marshmallow. Of course, we're already on Nougat, so it's a generation behind. But I mean, in one vein, good, they kept their promise that they were going to eventually update it to Android Marshmallow, because I was beginning to wonder, because the phone had been out for quite a few months with no update. And so at least it's finally doing that, but I just find it interesting that, now we get a big update once it's revealed that, there's all this ad tech, getting built into this stuff, that is creating a huge security exploit. Now, the phone in particular that people were concerned about was the Blue, is that the R1 that was being sold by Amazon for like $50. And, it just kind of goes to show. Now, I think, and a couple Q&As ago, we talked about post-scarcity. And I talked about how smartphones might be the first product that's really getting down to that zero marginal cost. Okay, to where the cost of production is almost zero based upon everything else that goes around it, within the market. But we're not there yet. Okay. And clearly, the ad tech that got built into it, it's not like somebody put in necessarily, a purposely, at least it doesn't seem to be, a purposely malicious, piece of software into Blue phones. It was that this was a type of ad tech similar to what happened with Lenovo, okay, to where it wasn't Sailfish. Now I can't remember the name of what that was. I'm in the dungeon, folks, so I can't look everything up here as I'm talking. But recently, you had the issue with Lenovo to where various ad software, or ad tech as it's called, advertising tech, it's software designed to feed you better, or send you ads and all this shit, right? It's similar to that, and you figure that the ad tech is what actually brings down the price of the phone. Like, why was this Blue phone? Why was the Blue R1 from Amazon? Why was it down to $50? Well, one is that it had Amazon software on there, and so you would assume that Amazon was fronting some of the bill, because the phone really should have cost at least $200 to $300. Okay, this is similar to what I bring up with computers, is that there's really no such thing as a $200 computer, despite what a lot of capitalists want to tell you, is that, look how cheap things are, this is wonderful, yada, yada, yada. Not really. Okay, there really is no computer that should cost less than $600. If it costs less than that, it is being subsidized by ad tech, by advertising technology, advertising software, whatever that ends up shaping up as. Now, come to find out, this is exactly what created the problem with the Blue R1. Is that there was certain ad tech in it that that ended up being this terribly malicious exploit. And well, I mean, it's so bad with the R1 anyway. Amazon stopped selling the phone entirely. I mean, and who knows if it's ever going to see the light of day, yet. So, I just wanted to bring it up quick, just because I thought it was interesting that my phone was suddenly updating. Got caught red-handed, Blue. So, which Blue is, I mean, it's kind of a hybrid company. It's not entirely Chinese because their U.S. base of operations is out of Miami, and that is kind of the central base of operations that a lot of people deal with. But I know a lot of people were like, oh, it's the Chinese spying on us, blah, blah, the Chinese government is spying on us, blah, 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 and people are freaking out. I had the concern for a moment when they mentioned that phones from BLU, from Blue, were one of the ones with this ad tech exploit. But thinking about it, like, if the concern is, and Joe, remember a few years Joe Biden said don't buy from Highway or ZTE because they have Chinese government spyware on them? Well, folks, every phone, or at least, even all the other phones, forget about Blue, say it's Samsung, say it's, I don't know, pick your big boys, LG, whatever. They're loaded with spyware from the NSA. I mean, cell phones, are spy devices, straight up. Okay. I mean, yeah, you don't want something that malicious, say, where, someone outside of, you don't want a state actor to do it either. Okay. But my point being is that, yeah, it was a serious exploit that happened. But look, if you're worried about the Chinese government seeing what you're doing, if you're worried about government seeing what you're doing, some government is seeing what's happening on your phone, unless you take very extreme steps. And I mean extreme steps. Okay. And that's what I started the Dark Android project about. But most people aren't willing to go that, they're not willing to take that ride. They're not willing to, to go that distance. To where they're willing to do what it takes to make a device as secure and private as possible, to where, just about any government, maybe can't get an easy look at it. But the point I want to bring up is very simply, if you're worried about the Chinese government, look, the U.S. government is doing all of it and more. Okay. Like, every government is looking at your phone. And it's such a mess. I didn't like the fact that there was this appeal to, the Chinese government is looking at it. And it's like, oh, what? Because you're not? Because the NSA is not looking at everything I do on my phone? It's just, the logic that these people lay out is absolutely nuts. But anyway, it looks like most BLU phones are updating now, with very serious updates. So the problem's getting patched. Good. I'm glad. I guess it was that serious. In many ways, the real answer here is to just not rely on your mobile devices. I think that, they're very unique animals in that they are, it's a fine mixture of specific software and specific hardware. And you are totally at the mercy of the company, of the hardware manufacturer, really, as to, how secure you can make the device. As to where with a PC, with a laptop and all that, you have far more control of what you can do about the security of that device. Say, putting on other operating systems. All these different things that you can do. Like we mentioned with the Lenovo case. Okay, now there was a huge problem with ad tech put onto these cheap Lenovo laptops, right? The thing is that all that ad tech would have been meaningless if you were running Linux. Because it used Windows, it wasn't until you booted up into Windows that anything could be done with the issues with the ad tech. Okay, so, if you really are serious about security, stop relying on your fucking mobile devices. That, I guess that's the real takeaway to have here. Anyway, all right, I want to get into we're running wild here. I want to get into this is a huge question and an important one that I want to get into, and I want to do. I want to do this right to make sure I cover it properly. So I'm going to read the whole the question here, and it has a little bit of length, but then I'm going to break it down. So this is from obviously, because it's being asked here, it comes from a patron. Hey Brian, first off, apologies for the long message. I've got what I think is a very subtle and nuanced idea and question that I think gets consciously and unconsciously overlooked and ignored by many people. To try and be short, I've come to think that deriving pleasure from violence in video games is a sign of a broken psychology. I know that may sound controversial and maybe not a new idea, but, and so, we're going to read on here as to exactly, what he's talking about. Some background. To date myself, I've been a gamer since my parents got me Pong way back in the day and have been an avid lover of video games and tabletop games like D&D ever since. The last few years, though, I've lost interest in gaming, not because of the violence. They just don't hold much interest for me anymore, at least for now. While what I say may apply to you as well, it's not directed at you. And of course, by you, he means me. The reason for this, though, came about while listening to a favorite gaming podcast. The two hosts are great guys that I've listened to on various shows for years, but they will occasionally go on rants about peace, nonviolence, respecting others, or gun control. Not that I want this message to be about, when they feel something in the news warrants it, like a mass shooting or something in politics perhaps. My disconnect and confusion arises from the fact that these same people, and many others, vocally arguing for peace derive great pleasure and enjoyment from also doing incredibly disturbing violence to representations of living creatures using guns, swords, chainsaws, you name it. And I assume he means, on video games, obviously. Reading on. I get that I'm talking about real violence versus fake violence, but real life versus pixels on a screen. Real life versus fake violence. Real life versus pixels on a screen, which is why I don't think this is a moral question, but a psychological one. This is just my growing opinion, but I think this shows the signs of a broken, via trauma, human being. Psychologically. I don't think much in life is black or white, but a shade of gray. I would agree with you on that, just breaking in. Reading on. So in this, about it being a shade of gray. So in this case, I don't think there's an easy answer. Where along the spectrum do things start to go wrong? Beginning, say, from checkers on one end, where you are trying to kill your opponent's pieces on the board, all the way to something like Westworld or the Star Trek holodeck, where the RPG-style world that you're in can't be distinguished from real life on the other end. Would it be okay to chainsaw the representation of a human in half and shoot its remains with a BFG on the holodeck, laughing with glee all the while at the same time adamantly voicing disgust at violence in the real world all around you? Or what about VR? Does that add anything to the mix? To me, these thoughts raise some huge red flags. I think many gamers have some very strong biases and deep emotional as well as financial hooks into gaming that may prevent them from looking at this objectively. And while I may not be giving up gaming completely just yet myself, I do think it merits real thought and examination. Woo, okay. So this, as you can tell, this is a huge subject, and really, I could do a whole episode just talking about that alone. But I'm going to try, and really address it here. I agree that it's one that may not have very clean-cut answers. Most things don't. Frankly, let's just be honest. I agree with what the messenger or what the emailer said, and I'll just say emailer, even though it's sent through Patreon. Is that, life is very much, there's lots of shades of gray, there's lots of nuance in life. There aren't always these, hardcore, clear-cut answers for a lot of things. So the question, I'm guessing more or less, is that, does someone suffer from psychological damage if they are playing a game and that game's kind of focus, say like a first-person shooter or even a real-time strategy game, is on the, kind of the slaughter, maybe not even mass slaughter, of living creatures through whatever various means. It could be, lollipop chainsaw, or it could be, I don't know, whatever. It could be a game with, swords. You could be playing Soul Calibur or whatever. Not that necessarily you see people get killed in that, but you certainly fight in it. Things like this, or, an FPS like Doom or something like that. What's the deal there? Well, yeah, so I'll describe my own taste as a gamer, as a very avid gamer, now, and actually as a game developer. Now, as a game developer, I do have, my characters do kill monsters. They will at times kill, machines, if you can say that. And I mean, depends on their level of sentience, right? Or they're not sentience, but their level of sapience, maybe. I do that, but at the same time, like with Hypercronius, the game I developed, Hypercronius, I made it like super clear that as far as human beings go, your characters never actually, and spoiler alert, folks, like never actually kill any human beings. When like kind of the big bad guy in it does himself in, through his own hatred. I mean, you have to see it to understand why. So it's not like I'm giving away everything here. But yeah, I'm very conscious of the fact that like in my games, I don't really want that to happen. I don't really want human on human violence. And I'm reminded of, actually Nolan Bushnell, way back in the day when Atari was in its heyday. He actually said that, when it comes to human on human violence, he said, he says, we're never going to cross that line. We're not going to, or, I should say human on human lethality. You have to be very careful with that. I mean, like, is there a harm in, say, playing is a boxing game the same thing as, as playing a game of Quake, right? I think, boxing is a sport. I mean, but some people say you're damaged even if you're into that sort of thing. Oof. I mean, this is such a huge subject. It really, really is. So, but I want to say, as to my own taste. So as a developer, yeah, as far as humans killing humans, I don't make that a part of the program. I don't include that in my games and likely never will. At least the good guys, quote unquote, or the protagonists in the game won't be the ones, doing that. They won't be engaging in that, or at least once they've had their, proverbial awakening, they won't be engaging in that. That's personal taste on my part. Now, at the same time, do I play games like Duke Nukem, and things like this? Yes. However, and there's a huge however here, okay? And you could say, the emailer could claim that I am, kind of justifying after the fact, why I still enjoy this stuff. I consider games, say like Shadow Warrior, Duke Nukem, even Quake 3, and specifically Quake 3, like these games are so, or maybe even Unreal, like some versions of Unreal Tournament, they are so over the top. They are so ridiculous. That like, they're so removed from reality that, I mean, they enter a realm of fantasy to where like, I think your brain knows that's not another human being killing another human being. Like, I mean, the sprites might look that way, but like, it's just so fucking ridiculous. That it, it becomes in a way comical. Now, some people might bristle at the idea that human death is comical. And believe me, I'm on board with you. Okay. As someone, and I don't mean to bring this up to make it dark. I just, if you're a new listener, look, I was in the military. I've killed people. Okay. And I don't like it, and I'm never going to do it again. I'm not saying I'll never go into the army again. I'm saying I'll never kill anybody again. So certainly I'm very sensitive, to that, that I don't want to do that. But then that's why I don't play Call of Duty. That's why I don't really play Battlefield. I don't play, there's a lot of these first person shooters that I just don't touch. Especially when their goal in life is to emulate, war. I won't do it. It's not that I can't, I just won't. I don't want to. So I think there's a lot of gray here, when it comes to this. I'm not laying out any harsh judgment on people if you play Call of Duty. And somebody could say, well, what about Call of Duty Infinite Warfare? It's in a sci-fi setting. There's nothing even remotely like reality in it. Okay, well, maybe that falls under kind of the same thing, like I said, with Duke Nukem, or with Quake 3. Or even Shadow Warrior, to where it's just so fucking ridiculous and over the top. Like your brain knows there's no reality here. There's nothing, there's no reality to be had. So I guess what I'm saying is that I do have concerns where when it's a very, and where do you draw the line? Yeah, I guess that comes down to a lot of people, it's wherever your personal threshold is. But yeah, I have concerns over like wanting to act like you're in a war. Like I think, cause I think war is such a depraved act. That's the other thing too. I mean, and I'm trying to think about this, trying to like analyze perhaps some unconscious decisions of mine as well. I don't like playing the first person shooters where, I'm part of some, group where I'm part of a, like a military or a team or something like this. Another first person shooter that might be the antithesis of a lot of this would be something like, say, Metroid Prime, to where most of the time you're really just exploring. You're not even shooting, and your weapons are designed to, help you get around a certain area, and you're dealing with aliens of, varying degrees of intelligence and all that. Yeah, but in that you're very independent, because I love those games. I think those games are amazing. But again, it's super clear that you're not in any way enacting reality. So I think there's something to what you're thinking about. I really do. I do find it suspect, that someone revels in playing something like Call of Duty, or something like that. But it's so tough to draw on a lot of that, because a lot of things, this is an important point to bring up, is that a lot of people get interested or engage in certain activities, not just video games, certain activities. I mean, this could be true for sports. This could be true for all kinds of things. The reason they do that is, for everybody, it's usually an escape from reality, right? But for a lot of people, it's not necessarily an escape from reality, but it's more, it is a way to re-engage reality under a different set of rules, meaning they offer the ability to live an alternative lifestyle. And that can be appealing to some people because, because they know that the rules of society as is are just fucked up. Like they're just off. They're totally off base and they're wrong. A lot of people, take football, for example. Okay. A lot of people talk about why do people get so excited about football? Why are people so hot and bothered about it? Well, because in some ways, football is an alternative universe where the rules do apply unilaterally, and the rules are kind of perfect, kind of. I mean, there's some questions, about various things, replays and all this different stuff, right? But a lot of people think that that's the appeal to it, is that there is this, like the rules of the game are very well laid out. They're agreed upon. There's, set punishments and all this different stuff. It's a very safe kind of alternate universe that people get to live in every Sunday and Monday night. And whether people realize that that's what they're doing or not, that's kind of what they're doing. And I in a lot of ways, I agree with that assessment. And it creates a sense of community and all of this. So you can't really even say across the board, I think, that necessarily this is some kind of reaction to trauma. All right. I mean, there's the potential that somebody just kind of gets dead and down about it, but it may just be, they might just be involved with it because it does create this alternative way of living within a reality, within a society that, where all the rules are in opposition and the rules are not based upon merit and the rules, really kind of work against the individual. As to where in video gaming, absolutely not. It's quite the opposite. The rules actually work in favor of, say, the individual and, and of your skill and also of, and even, working within, like, say, a team or community environment and things like this, that there's benefits to that. And those desires to want to exist in a world where things make sense, where, merit is recognized, abilities are recognized, and you can earn it. I mean, that can overlook a lot of things. I think that, that really can, like that. You can make a lot of excuses, a lot of concessions to be a part of something that makes sense, because the world doesn't, or society doesn't, I should say. I mean, the universe makes sense. There's, you have gravity. I mean, like there's, it has set rules that make sense. But society does not. And the rules in society are obviously, I mean, they're totally fucked up. To use a Christian saying, it's the kingdom upside down. And so, to be able to live in the kingdom right side up, yeah, I think people would go for that. Now, that doesn't address every aspect of this question, because then it becomes like, well, what about, how do you feel about somebody, say we had we have VR, or we end up with the Star Trek holodeck, and people go in there and they just go nuts, whipping around their chainsaws and all this stuff. Yeah, I'll admit, I think there might be something off. I think when it's on the screen, when it's just taking on, even in a holodeck, it'd still be pixels. I think when it gets to that point to where like you're really engaging with something so close to reality, which most video games really are not, to varying degrees, then, yeah, this is something kind of like last week, actually. Stephanie and I talked about this in the Q&A last week. Like, I get sex positivity. And I get that, people can have fantasies that would seem to be antithetical to human growth and into maybe what one would call a healthy mindset. But you have to be careful with that, right? Because, what's healthy, right? To some degree, there's a certain subjectivity, I think for a lot of people to that, when it comes to what is considered okay to think about and what isn't. A certain amount. There is objective truth. Don't confuse what I'm saying here. But I said there, I was like, look, if people engage in murder play when they're having sex, I think they're fucked up. I think something's wrong, because there's no way that, especially sex, should be mixed in with killing somebody, even if it's not real, even if you're just, acting it out. It's just a role play between a couple of people and you have safe words and all that shit, right? I still think that there's something, there is unfortunately something really askew in that mind. That's how I feel about it. You can disagree with me, and that's okay. I never ask anybody to agree with me at 100%. Now, would that also be true, say, for when we get onto the holodeck and somebody goes on a mass killing spree? Or it's like a Westworld situation where you can go there and bring out the real person? Well, that's something, interestingly, that the show Westworld is kind of exploring, is that, does Westworld just bring out the real person? And if these are the real people, being violent and just killing, these hosts or robots willy-nilly, is that trauma on display? Oh, yeah, I think so. I think there's plenty of evidence that shows, that the act of killing another human being is in no way natural. There's a broad range of sciences, I think, that bears that out, that proves that. But again, yeah, so I would definitely, I'd be concerned at that point. But then, when it comes to, like, say, playing Battlefield or Call of Duty, while I have personal umbrage with them, I don't know that I could come out and say, because I think people are still pretty good at, well, no, I don't know how to put that. But I think it's still far enough from reality that you don't actually go out and do that, most people aren't playing Modern Warfare and then they go hop in a helicopter, and they start lobbing off rounds, from a mounted assault. It's just not, and I don't think most people would even do that, because, so yeah, I get it. I see your point, and to some degree, I agree. Like, I don't take in simulating a real world combat situation like Battlefield or say Call of Duty does. That holds no appeal to me. But I understand perhaps why people who haven't actually been in war might not recognize why that's not appealing, because they've never actually been there. So I can't say that somehow it's a reaction to trauma. It could be. I think that could be true for some people, that's why they get into it. But I don't think it's an across the board thing. So I think you're onto something, emailer. I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. And especially when we get into, say, a holodeck situation, when we get to the point of being pixel perfect. Okay, to reality, then yeah, I have some very real concerns. But otherwise, outside of that, I think there can be so many reasons. It's not just one. I don't think it's just trauma. I think there could be other needs needs of connection, needs of recognition, and other things that could come into play that could override perhaps the detestable actions being put on the screen. So again, I really do think you're onto something, and I think in some, if not many cases, you're probably right, but I don't think it's across the board. I would hope that, like, say in the future, say if we were in, anarchist paradise or something, that people would see a game like Battlefield or something and say, oh, like this is terrible. What the hell are we thinking? Why would somebody even want to play this? Yeah, I would hope for that world. I don't think that could be true. I don't think it's true across the board. That's all. So, but I definitely think you're really, really, really onto something with that. I mean, there are other greater concerns, I think, with, say particularly like Call of Duty and Battlefield. Now, when you buy those games, and this is actually an argument that's been had for a few years now. When you buy those games, are you supporting the war machine? And I don't mean because, you're glorifying war or anything like that, but these games pay, like Activision and EA, Electronic Arts and all them, they pay big money to, weapons manufacturers to record the realistic sounds, and also they pay licensing fees to be able to display the guns accurately. Like they really do as much as they can within 60 frames per second. They go for, as hyper realistic as they can get. Okay. Again, I still think it's far away from reality. But I mean, not into the comedic, like Quake 3, like I said, Quake 3, Shadow Warrior, Duke Nukem 3D, those aren't based on reality because they're comedic. Like they're so ridiculous, that it's funny. I mean, there's no reality to be had there. But within these games, even though I think you can easily separate the fact that these aren't reality, they are trying very hard to be reality within that lack of reality, if that makes sense. And so the argument is that when you buy Call of Duty or when you buy Battlefield or whatever, are you in turn, is that the same as giving money to the war effort? Because, again, you're not using weapons on there. It's not like, I don't know. It's not like you're going with a 30-06 or whatever, whatever you want to, talk about. In those games, you are using military grade weapons that only the military has access to. Okay. And so, the money spent on developing those games goes directly into the coffers of the development of the war machine. So it becomes an argument is that, again, are you, in buying those games, are you supporting the war machine? That is a huge question. And people to this day debate that back and forth. They really do. I mean, now, again, Call of Duty is kind of a broad term because Call of Duty, you have like Infinite Warfare. Like you have, and even, maybe going back to like some of the World War II stuff, some of these other, games that take place in different times than the present, say, Infinite Warfare, nobody's really selling laser rifles, handheld laser rifles, exactly. So, you're not funding the war machine with that. So, it depends on the title, I guess you could say. But yeah, I mean, these are big questions that people need to think about. And again, it comes down to personal threshold, as far as that goes. I mean, because it's voluntary. Nobody's forcing you to buy Battlefield 4 or Call of Duty or something. And then at the same time, like, even if you buy another game, this is where things get murky. Because what if you buy another Activision game that's not Call of Duty, but it all goes into Activision's coffers and Activision's, or whoever's owning it, their moneymaker is Call of Duty. So are you, by buying, say, like Activision owned Blizzard, right? So by buying StarCraft, which obviously has no basis in reality, by buying StarCraft, StarCraft 2, are you funding the war machine with that? Because that same company deals with the military. I mean, like you can go, this is why it becomes so convoluted, because it just gets into, you could go on and on and on and on forever. As to, what are you going to do with that? Like you talk about, what's another company? I mean, there's lots of companies that make very benign things, but then at the same time, their R&D division is literally building war machines. do you buy Samsung phones when Samsung makes stuff for the military? I mean, who doesn't make something for the military these days? So, that turns into a whole other thing. I mean, this is something I love, admittedly, if someone and please, I wouldn't criticize, I don't generally criticize either way. I'll admit it. I really do have a problem with Call of Duty and Battlefield. In fact, I used to go to when I was, and I've told this story before on Sovereign Tech. I used to love going for midnight releases of games at the local GameStop in upstate New York. And in fact, maybe with the Nintendo Switch, since we're getting back to cartridge-based gaming, I might jump back on that because it's so much fun. But I remember when I was going there for a midnight release of a game, and the new Call of Duty was also coming out at that point. I think it might have been Modern Warfare 2, maybe. And they, GameStop, I don't think they called anybody to do it, but the local recruiting station, which was right nearby in where I lived in New Hartford, the local recruiting station called up GameStop because I was friends with the GM the general manager of the GameStop, and said, "Hey, we'd like to set up and we'd like to put out a display and everything for when people come to buy the new Call of Duty." They knew it was going down. They knew a lot of people would be lining up and showing up, to get their hands on Call of Duty. And it was a shit show. In my opinion, they brought Humvees. They set up, they set up a whole base camp in this parking lot at this shopping center where this GameStop was, all for the release of Call of Duty. That's not okay with me. I think that's horrendous. And I told my buddy, I told the GM, I was like, I think this is terrible. Don't do this. But what could he do? Because, when he did it, it wasn't necessarily his decision. He had to call corporate. And I don't know if there was any money exchange. I wasn't able to get that information. But, yeah, think about that this happens when these games come out, is that, the war machine uses it. It really does. As to where, when I went to, because this is the last midnight release I ever went to. This was back in 2011. When I went to the midnight release for Duke Nukem Forever, which was a great time. I think it was also the same. I think also Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was coming out that same night. But when I went for that, nobody showed up. The military didn't care about that because they know Duke Nukem's ridiculous, right? It's comedic, and it's so over the top. It's so removed from reality. So I think there's some takeaways from that, and I really am so hesitant to lay out a blanket statement. And I know the emailer is too. That's why you said that there's gray areas. Well, there's a lot of gray here, but I think there's a lot of truth, to what you had to say. And I would really respect, I respect people that are like, no, I'm not playing this shit. If this shit simulates the modern military, I'm not touching it. I really respect that. But I'm not going to necessarily say anything either way. So, all right, my phone is still updating. I'm going to have Android 6.0. Woohoo! I'm going to have a little drink here. Now, we're about an hour and 7. So I'm going to have a fun little, I'm just going to do a quick a fun bit to end this off because, this is a very, very serious subject. And emailer, if I didn't address your question, if I didn't get to everything, or if you have more you want, this is a conversation that's got to be had. It really does, because with virtual reality becoming a thing and all that, I think we have to wonder about this, because at the same time, virtual reality, as much as it could allow people to reenact their traumas, it could also help them work through it. It could help them deal with those traumas. By not creating a situation to where they can go around killing people, but by perhaps recreating their childhood. Or they could recreate that point and they could say to, say their virtual parents or something, "You hurt me, Mom. You hurt me, Dad. You did this to me and it's not okay. And I want to tell you it's not okay." And I think that has such potential, the risk of developing virtual reality to where it could be used to further trauma, but the potential for it to heal trauma, I think the risk is so, it's so worth it to develop it to where we could take advantage of that. I say, let's go for it. again, tech is the tool. It's how we use it. And I think there's a lot of great potential for including, going as far as the holodeck. I think there's just tons and tons of great potential for how that could help us, it could forward us and help us heal from so many things instead of reenact. So anyway, didn't mean to go into that. But let's have some fun here. I want to bring up a fun little geeky subject. So the geeky thing I want to get into, and I had mentioned this quite a few Q&As back. I said if you wanted me to talk about it, I would. And so I got from quite a few people, they wanted me to talk about it. And what this is, we're way out of left field. I'm going to talk about Planet of the Apes. Now, not exactly perhaps what you think. But Planet of the Apes, the 2001 film that was directed by Tim Burton, starred Mark Wahlberg, had Tim Roth in it, Helena Bonham Carter. Just a very, very Stella Warren. Oh, she looked amazing in that. Just a great. I really liked the movie. I'm a huge Planet of the Apes fan. I used to get so excited when the Sci-Fi Channel in the 90s, they'd have Planet of the Apes week, and they're like, it's a week of simian superiority and all that, and they'd have Roddy McDowall, who played Cornelius in the original series of films. They'd have him host it and everything before he died. Rest in peace. Just a, awesome series. So many great things going on with that. I cannot wait for the third one of the new series, War for the Planet of the Apes, that's coming out in July of next year, of 2017. Very much looking forward to that. I know some quote-unquote libertarian/anarchist people have reviewed the two previous recent Planet of the Apes movies, that being Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and were very critical of them, saying it's representative of tribalistic thinking and all this different shit. They're full of crap. Like they're so fucking off base in what they have to review. And I could do response reviews to their shit, and I tear it apart, because they're obviously not professionals. Or not, I shouldn't say they're not professionals, but they don't know shit about the movie business and and how directors work and what they're trying to show off and all that. These movies are fantastic. I thought the 2001 Planet of the Apes was wonderful. It was just shy, perhaps, of one of the last performances of Chuck Heston, who I think is the greatest actor of all time, Charlton Heston. I call him Chuck Heston. Really, that guy had it. And, of course, he just plays a bit role in the movie. But anyway, a lot of people, what I brought up was, how a lot of people were very confused by the ending of the 2001 Planet of the Apes. Okay, if you haven't seen it yet, folks, it's been 15 years. I am not going to give a shit about spoilers. Obviously, I don't anyway. All right. So what happens at the end of this movie, of the 2001 Planet of the Apes? This is the one with General Thade and all that, right? And again, Mark Wahlberg and whatever. Okay, what happens is that Mark Wahlberg, he escapes the destruction of the Oberon, the space station that he's on. He's playing the character Leo Davidson, right? And he is, he gets away, or he's in a pod, and that's how he ends up on this Planet of the Apes, is, because he's in this pod. And then his buddy, who ends up becoming like this god character, because of a very interesting twist of time, which is exactly like the original, or which is similar to what was done in the original Planet of the Apes, where, these astronauts, led by Chuck Heston, find out that they are actually in the future, as compared to, being on another planet. You sort of find out it's kind of the same deal, even though this one actually is on another planet. But, everything that they find on there is from that space station Oberon that Leo Davidson was originally working on. And so, his monkey buddy, Simos, shows up, at the end of the film in a working pod, because his pod crashed. Okay, Mark Wahlberg's character, Leo Davidson, his pod crashed into the, into the water, and he got out. And so he takes Simos's, the monkey's pod, and plans to get back to Earth by using that pod. And so at the end of the movie, he gets in the pod, he goes off, and he sees Earth, and he's getting ready to, to land on Earth. He lands on Earth and crash lands, and he ends up in Washington, D.C. In fact, he crashes or lands pretty much right in front of the Lincoln Monument in Washington, D.C. And when he gets there, it's this interesting scene, because And Tim Burton is just trying to lay out a hook, kind of like what was done by Rod Serling in the original Planet of the Apes from the 60s, to where, at the end you see the Statue of Liberty, right? I'm not giving anything away. If you bought the fucking movie, if you even saw the cover for the movie Planet of the Apes, you saw the Statue of Liberty. You know what happened. So, anyway, So he gets there, and the Lincoln Memorial, it looks like Lincoln, but then it pans up to the head, and the head is of an ape, and in fact, it's General Thade, who is the main heavy, the main villain in the movie, in the 2001 Planet of the Apes. And so what happened here? Like, how exactly did, because they weren't on Earth, like Thade wasn't on Earth. How exactly did, and then the cops show up, a bunch of reporters show up, and they're all apes. So the Earth is suddenly, modern 20th century Earth, and it is the 20th century. 20th century Earth is, just completely populated by apes. What the fuck went down? And so a lot of people ask the question, like, wait a minute, how the hell did that happen? Because the movie doesn't explain it all. It doesn't even come close to explaining it. Now, I know how it happened. And maybe you can find it on, I don't know, say Google Images or Bing Images or something like that. But there was an insert. Because again, I've been a fan of Planet of the Apes for a really, really long time. And when this movie came out, this was at the height of the DVD craze, which is just a great time for movies because the shit that people were putting into DVDs was amazing. When you bought a DVD, I've talked about this on Sovereign Tech many times. When you bought a DVD back then, the late 90s, and the early aughts, you got an experience. I mean, like you weren't just buying a movie. You got a multimedia experience. And like there would even be inserts, right, in the cases for the DVDs. And here is, no pun intended, such a case where the 2-disc special edition, and in this case, I guess it really was a special edition because I've never seen it released otherwise. In the 2-disc special edition, which also came with like a CD-ROM with a bunch of really cool stuff on it, of the 2001 Planet of the Apes, it came with an insert, and I had it. It came with an insert that was just like, it looked like a postcard, and it had the planet of where the bulk of the Planet of the Apes took place on, the alien planet where the Oberon crashed and everything. And then it had Earth, and then it showed some circles, and it showed kind of like a timeline. And like one of the circles is the trajectory, because it's a shot of space, showing the two planets, all that. One of the trajectories shows from the Planet of the Apes, we'll just call it that, to, what it was like called Ashlar or something, because it was like the year 5,000 something in Planet of the Apes. That's where it ends up, where all that ends up going. So you see from Ashlar to Earth through the wormhole that took, the character of Leo to the year 5021 or whatever. You see that this path, and it says in parentheses on this flight path, it says, did Thade, and it puts a question mark, but it says, did Thade take the original pod, Leo's pod that was crashed in the water on Ashlar? Did he take that back through the portal to, say, Civil War Earth? And then, that's, and they put a question mark on it on this little postcard, but just the fact that they put that card in there, they were explaining the ending to you. Is that's what happened. Now, Tim Burton never went into it. He never even wanted to describe it. He said he left it fun for a future director, like if they made a sequel, because he said he wasn't going to make the sequel to it, that he left it open for the future director to kind of figure it out. But obviously nobody went forward with that. The movie was a moderate success. It didn't get like terrible reviews, but it wasn't like great, which kind of like Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I would argue have been great movies. So I think when they released this 2-disc special edition DVD of Planet of the Apes 2001, they told you how it happened. Is that there was the damaged pod that Thade took, somehow repaired, and he took that back to Earth, through that wormhole. And that's how that went down. And, I can extrapolate further. Like there's never been, a full answer on this. My guess is that Thade did go back to the time of, went to like the 19th century. He ended up in the 19th century as to where Leo Davidson ends up in the 20th or the 21st. early 21st when the movie took place. So he goes back to that time, and he probably like found all of the apes, say, in Africa, whatever other countries, and wherever else they are, and he like led them to a civil war. And at the time, if it's the 19th century, humanity wasn't that technologically adept. And so it would make sense that enough apes could actually conquer humanity. So that the second part is my own speculation on what exactly happened based around the fact that it was the Lincoln Memorial that represented it. But as far as what I think you can safely say happened based upon the fact that this came right from the studio and their production team, for the DVD itself, is that Thade took the damaged pod that was at the bottom of, that little lake or whatever, and fixed it somehow and took that through the wormhole back to Earth. So that explains the ending of the 2001 Planet of the Apes. And people said they were excited to hear about it, so there you have it. Sorry. There's some great shit coming out for Planet of the Apes this year, or next year, I should say, in 2017. There's going to be some great omnibus collections of the various comics. I am really excited. Like in the past 2 years, we had Planet of the Apes and Star Trek crossover because Planet of the Apes, the comics now, there's still Planet of the Apes comics running. They're from Boom Studios. They hold the copyright for that. And IDW have worked together a lot. And so Boom Studios and IDW, they did the Star Trek crossover, and it was so good. That was such a great crossover if you've never read that. Also, I think next year, Boom Studios is going to work with DC, and they're doing and this is so cool, they're doing a Green Lantern and Planet of the Apes crossover. I cannot wait for this. And in fact, the character of Cornelius that I mentioned earlier, that was kind of the main character that Roddy McDowall played in the original films, he's going to become a Green Lantern. And I was just like, this is brilliant. He's a scientist. Why wouldn't he? Like, this is the best. And I always love the Green Lantern series in DC because it's where DC got to go science fiction, right? So good stuff, happening with Planet of the Apes, and War for the Planet of the Apes, I think is probably going to be, phenomenal. I really look forward to that. And that kind of, that's another thing too. I mean, like, I guess it's not an active role where you can watch, a movie and it doesn't mean you're messed up watching a movie, a violent film or something, kind of like we were talking about earlier with video games. It's the unique thing about video games is that, it's something you participate in all this, right? But anyway, I look forward to the film. I'm not going to go down that road right now. We've been going on long enough. But yeah, so I hope that explains it to you. I hope you had a little fun with that answer. I enjoy that movie. If you haven't watched it in a while, I think it holds up. It's not as good as the classic Planet of the Apes films, and it's not as good as the modern trilogy that was made. But it has its place. It works. I mean, and the Planet of the Apes series, like even within the original film series, had been it kind of rebooted within itself, a couple times. So it doesn't hurt, to have like a, kind of an alternate reality version of it, that gets put on display with Tim Burton's, rendition of it. And I really don't like Tim Burton, don't tell him, but I really don't like Tim Burton, work generally. This is kind of the first Tim Burton movie, aside from, maybe the Batman films, where I was like, okay, yeah, that was good. Because otherwise talk about somebody that I think has a lot of trauma and is really fucked up. Yeah, he's one of them. So, all right, there you have it. Enough for that. You're going to get something tomorrow on Thanksgiving as well. I'll get you a little something special out for you that you'll get to enjoy. But I hope you enjoy this. And there will be, of course, a new Sex and Science Hour coming out this Friday. And we'll be on episode 201 for Sovereign Tech. And episode 202, if everything goes right, I've got something really nice lined up for episode 202. So look forward to that in a couple weeks. Anyway, enough of that. I'll see you on the other side, everybody.
You just experienced Sovereign Tech. Go to sovereigntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovereign Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.